Welcome back to New Day. Concert promoter AEG Live found not liable for Michael Jackson's death. A jury cleared AEG of wrongdoing and awarded the Jackson family, therefore, nothing. The 5-month-long trial could have been worth $1 billion. Now, we're going to speak to the singer's former attorney in just a moment. But first, CNN's Miguel Marquez has more for us from Los Angeles. Good morning, Miguel.
Good morning there, Chris. This was a shocker of a verdict given how complex and how long this trial went on. The jury form itself was complicated. 16 questions the jurors had to answer. 5 of them had to be in Jackson's favor before they could even consider damages. They only got to question 2.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
This morning, the verdict in the Michael Jackson wrongful death civil suit sinking in.
We, of course, are not happy with the result as it stands now.
Jurors speaking out.
Michael Jackson was pretty used to getting his own way.
AEG Live may have hired Dr. Conrad Murray, but Michael Jackson was responsible for his own care.
If anybody said no, well, they were out of the mix, and he'd find somebody else.
Jackson's mother and children sought as much as $2 billion from the concert promoter for what they claim was the company's role in hiring and supervising Dr. Conrad Murray, who was convicted in 2011
guilty of the crime of involuntary manslaughter
for administering a fatal dose of the surgical anesthetic propofol to the pop star.
It wasn't easy for anyone.
The verdict all the more stunning.
Question number 2.
As jurors found Dr. Murray competent when AEG hired him.
Was Dr. Conrad Murray unfit or incompetent to perform the work for which he was hired? Answer, no.
Conrad Murray was hired to be a general practitioner. And maybe had the word ethical been in the question, it could have been a different outcome.
The jury deliberated a mere 13 hours after sitting through 5 months of testimony and the presentation of thousands of documents. This much less publicized trial full of twists and turns, including testimony from Jackson's crying mother, Catherine, and the mother of Jackson's children, Debbie Rowe. The stress of the trial affecting Jackson's daughter, Paris, hospitalized and still getting special treatment after a suicide attempt. Now, Michael Jackson's mother, Catherine, saying she's at least happy that the jury found that AEG did, in fact, hire Dr. Murray. Both she and Jackson's lawyers say they will look at this verdict and see if they can take it somewhere else. Chris?
All right, Miguel, thank you very much. Let's bring in one of Michael Jackson's former defense attorneys to dig through the wrongful death verdict. Mr. Tom Mesereau joins us this morning from San Francisco. He, of course, a defense attorney at Mesereau & You. Tom, great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to be with you.
Let's step on some controversy here. The juror comes out and says, now, if the word ethical had been there, the verdict may have been different. Is there any cause to assume that we had an improper instruction here, or is this just a layman, you know, a non-lawyer making a statement that isn't really legally relevant?
Well, Chris, you never know what a jury will do. People are complex. When they get together in a jury room, the chemistry is complex. You never know who the dominant personalities will be. So trials are a mystery, and juries are as well. However, I must say I'm quite surprised by this. I thought the primary battle was over whether or not AEG had hired Conrad Murray. AEG's lawyers for years now have been saying AEG did not hire him. The plaintiff's lawyers, Catherine Jackson and Michael's children, were saying they did hire him. 12 jurors unanimously said AEG hired Conrad Murray, and then to many people's surprise, including myself, they said that he was fit for the job. I think the evidence was overwhelming that he was incompetent, that AEG was involved in a conflict of interest with Dr. Murray, that they were pressuring him because they were paying his exorbitant salary. And I'm just quite surprised by this somewhat contradictory position that the jury took. Well, I don't think they really analyzed things properly.
All right, and let's talk about why, okay? Because there's some big words involved with this. Competent. What does that mean here? Explain what they were found. They said he's competent, which means what? That the doctor was suitable for the job. He was under his own control of what he did, and therefore you can't blame his employer. Why does that matter here?
Well, it matters because the employer, I think, the evidence show, was in a conflict of interest with Dr. Murray. In fact, the plaintiffs put on a Stanford University ethics professor who said he'd never seen a bigger conflict of interest than this. You had the corporation hiring Murray, holding his salary over his head to get Michael to rehearsals. You had evidence that Michael was not well. And I'm just surprised that they would say he was fit for the job. They must have simply looked at the surface. They must have said, well, he had a license. He was not under disciplinary or suspension proceedings. But I don't think that's the way they should have looked at it. Conrad Murray clearly was not an addiction specialist. He didn't know what he was doing. He broke so many ethical principles by bringing gallons of propofol, into a home and not administering it properly. I'm just surprised.
But it's a little, is it consistent in a way, because they say he was competent, and that is consistent with even what happened in the criminal trial, right? He was found involuntary manslaughter. That means recklessness. That means he perceived a risk and he ignored it. So if you're able to perceive it, then you're competent, your brain works, you just made the wrong decisions. Isn't there some through thread there?
Well, that seems to be along the line that they used to find him fit for the job. I think they should have looked a little more deeply, and I think they should have said, look, Michael needed an addiction specialist. He had sleep problems. AEG knew about that. One of their CEOs had been his tour manager in the 90s, knew he had addiction problems. This man was not investigated properly and was not fit for the job. But that doesn't seem to be the track they took, and AEG dodged the bullet in this one.
It's tough to deal with fact error when the jury has made its determination, but if you think it's that obvious a case, is there any recourse for the Jackson family, any way to go now?
I think there is. I spoke to one of the plaintiff's lawyers yesterday. He told me they're going to appeal a number of issues, including before the case got to trial, the judge threw out negligence and wrongful death. The only issue she allowed to get to the jury was whether or not AEG had wrongfully hired, supervised, or retained Dr. Murray. And I think there are other issues they're going to raise as well. So this case is not over, from what I hear.
And different than a criminal trial, you can sometimes get more bites at the apple on the civil side. Tom Mesereau, thank you very much for the perspective. Look forward to talking to you more as this case and others go forward.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Kate, over to you.
All right, Chris, thanks so much.